Well, hello and welcome to our online teaching for our Sabbath Sunday observance. So the last Sunday of every year, we have been in the habit of taking off as a church community, having an online teaching, and it helps reset and shift us into a mode of rest and rejuvenation. And that's something that we find important at Mosaic and is a foundational practice. And so actually all of January, we're going to be talking about foundational practices as a part of our Reset message series. And so this is the first one. We'll be talking about the word of the year, discernment practice, and other things that we find really important in the fabric of following Jesus as a part of the Mosaic community. And so today we're going to be talking about practicing Sabbath as a part of that observance. And so being busy in our culture, being exhausted, sometimes is a badge of honor or a badge of achievement. It seems like the busier you are, the less margin that you have in your schedule, the more important you're seen as. And today I just want to talk about challenging that mindset, how we can maybe bust out of that cultural practice and step further into the way of Jesus and how he practiced rest and how he observed Sabbath and invites us to do the same. If you're tired in our culture, you're doing life right. That just seems like that's the way that it is. And so if you buy into that, the more you'll work, the more you'll say yes to, probably the more guilt you feel about things being unfinished or the unclosed loops or the unsent emails or all the things that you want to do but you can't quite get around to it. And it seems like, if you're like me, your family, your kids are the first to suffer because they get sort of the leftovers in our culture. They get all the leftover exhaustion, the leftover attention, the leftover presence, if there is any, and our work gets our first and our best. And so Jesus really challenges that, and worshiping and following God really challenges that. So that's what I want to talk about today, is that we don't need another productivity hack. You probably don't need more information on rest. You probably don't need another message on Sabbath. What we need to do is actually practice it, actually do the things that we already know that we should be doing. And there's no guilt and there's no shame. Sometimes we just need to be reminded. And I think that's what a message like this does. And even reading the scripture as a whole, we get into it. We're reminded, I should be doing that. God's inviting me. He's welcoming me to follow him in this area and in this way and in this practice. And so throughout today, there's no guilt. There's no shame. It's all a reminder that we, yes, can be doing better. And that, yes, Jesus has done what he needs to do on our behalf so that we're empowered and we're welcomed with grace and with love and with joy into following him in this way. And so, again, what we probably don't need is another hack or another shortcut. Actually, what you might need is the permission to stop. You might need someone just reminding you and telling you, this is a healthy practice. This is a healthy way to live life. And it's the way that Jesus envisioned for us. The problem is stopping feels irresponsible, doesn't it? Doesn't saying no or dialing back a bit, doesn't that feel irresponsible? Aren't you told you just need to suck it up and adult? Isn't that the message that you're sent? So we just get heaps of condemnation on us where you probably, and I probably too, just need someone to say it's okay to stop every once in a while. It's okay to say no and to turn your phone off and to not answer the emails. It's okay to sit on the couch with a book or take a nap or read some poetry or go for a walk or whatever it is that gets you rested and rejuvenated. It's okay to say yes to that and no to the other things that compete with that. There's always one more email. There's always one more practice, one more errand, one more thing to attend. Even rest a lot of times gets optimized, so it feels like it's one more thing on the to-do list or it's one more thing to learn how to do better, and it feels exhausting. We turn days off into recovery projects, hoping we feel human again by Monday, only to restart that insane process all over again and crawl our way to the weekend. Spiritually, this shows up in subtle ways. We believe in God, but we live as if that everything depends on us to pull off. Our prayer life suffers when we neglect pausing to pray and inviting God in, or discerning what it is that He actually wants us to do. We feel anxious. We trust God in theory, but our calendars tell a different story about us and about what we prioritize. So here's the question that we need to answer. What if our exhaustion isn't a scheduling problem, but more of a spiritual problem? Okay, so from the beginning pages of Scripture, we see that Sabbath is not optional and it's not incidental. It's foundational to what it means to be human according to God's good design. So in the beginning chapters of the Bible, in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, it says this: "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was all over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, 'Let there be light,' and there was light. God saw that the light was good." And he goes for 5 more days of this. That's the first day. He goes 5 more days of creation, comes to the end of the 6th day. It picks up on this in Genesis chapter 2, verse 1. "God saw that all he had made, and it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the 6th day. Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. By the 7th day God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the 7th day he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the 7th day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done." So God creates all of the world in 6 days. And so I know there's a debate over young earth versus old earth creationism, all that stuff. If you can set that aside, because I don't think we're going to solve it today, what God is communicating is there's an act of creation. God did something over an amount of time, and that last time period, he took off as a day of rest to enjoy his creation, to let them enjoy him. Remember, on the 6th day, the 6th time period, humans were created. And so their first full day was actually a day off. It was a day of rest to be with God, to be with each other, and to enjoy all of creation. God takes his day off, not because he's tired, but because rest completes creation. Humanity's first full day, like I said, it's not a work day, it's a rest day with him. Imagine that, starting your week, right? Like really thinking about Saturday, maybe Sunday, as a day of rest where you start your week rested, full because of relationships that you've poured into and they've poured into you, worship that you've encountered, presence of God that you've been in the midst of. And that is how you start your week, full of joy, full of rest, full of contentment in God. So this full day off with God that Adam and Eve took, that's not a small thing. That thing matters. It tells us who we are, that before we do anything, we're fully accepted, we're fully loved, we're fully delighted in, and we don't get our meaning, identity, and purpose from what we do, but from who we are connected to God and one another. Okay, Sabbath is not a collapse day after work or after a work week. It's resistance to the lie that our value comes from productivity. It's a weekly practice of trust where we stop long enough to remember that God is God and we are not. Okay? So Jesus embodied this rhythm. He withdrew from crowds. He refused to be rushed. He slept during storms, and he invited exhausted people into a different way of living. Here's what it says in Matthew 11, verse 29 and 30. This is from the Message translation. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and I am humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." So rest is serious business to Jesus. He mentions it twice here in this teaching. And so Jesus not only instructs us in a better way of living, he invites us to find rest in him. In other words, he doesn't give us more information about rest, why it's important. He actually invites us to be connected to him as the fulfillment of rest. So it's in Jesus that we find the fullness of rest that our soul is really looking for. And it's a challenge to the common culture that says find your identity in what you work, where you work, how much money you earn, what things you can buy with that money. Find your identity in who you work with or for, the business size that you own or that you work for, or any of the other things that we are feel compulsive about being a part of. Jesus says, dial it down, be connected to me. My burden is light, my yoke is easy. Take it upon yourself, and I'll work with you, I'll walk with you through all of life in that way. So, rest isn't a new technique again. It's not a life hack. It's not a shortcut. True rest that our souls really long for is found in Jesus. It's about finding all of that purpose, all of that fulfillment, all of that definition of success in Jesus, and maintaining the priorities and accomplishing goals that are aligned with His will, and letting the things that are outside of that go, and being at peace with that decision. Real rest requires real surrender to Jesus. And when we do, we'll find renewal and we'll find rejuvenation that we just can't find anywhere else or manufacture for ourselves. So Sabbath is how we are reminded of that, and it's how we learn to live from rest with God instead of chasing everything else that'll take us away from Him and from that. Okay, so I want to give you 4 things to think about today. 4 maybe dimensions of how to Sabbath well. And I'll just tell you this, I love Sabbath. I look forward to it. It's one of my favorite, probably if not the favorite day of the week. Our Sabbath starts, because it's a little unconventional. We work on Sundays, so my Sabbath, our family Sabbath, starts Saturday night. At sundown, around that time, around dinner time, we enjoy each other. We have pizza. Sarah and I may go out for a date night. We may watch a movie as a family. Play games. There's a lot of things that we do. Saturday, we sleep in. Then we roll out of bed, get some coffee, sit on the couch and read books, have a late brunch, and then more games, more hangout time, a nap in there. It is the best. It is, phones are mostly in drawers. Devices are mostly in drawers. We try and go analog. Magazines, like long form articles, paper books, like hardback books, things like that. Things that remind us of like our embodiment as people. And so it's good to get outside of the digital mindset every once in a while. And we're not perfect at it, but we do really try hard as a family to be present with one another, to have, tactile things that we're doing, and have fun together. That's the really important part to us. And so 4 things that have helped us to do that regularly and to keep those things in mind, because again, we don't do it perfectly. We sometimes travel on a Saturday, or someone needs help moving, but pretty much we're locked in on having a Sabbath. And we're so locked in, and I'll mention this too. I think it's really important in Sabbath to touch boredom too. To actually let your mind wander, to actually not have anything to do, to hear the kids complain, I'm bored, can we be on our phones, to say no to that impulse, and actually get in creativity mode that really doesn't happen until you touch boredom. So I'll give you that. That's for free. So let me give you these 4 things. First, Sabbath means stopping. Sabbath means ceasing from work, not shifting it, not having one browser tab open instead of 50. It means shutting things down. It means a hard stop. Some of us need like a radical stop to our lives, and Sabbath gives us that. And so you might be able to do that today. You might have to plan for it. You might not be able to do a full 24 hours. That's okay. But some sort of measured time that has boundaries where you stop everything that you're doing. You don't do errands. You don't do chores at home. You stop and you're present with yourself, with God, and with others. Okay? It could be not answering work messages even when they expect you to. You may have to say, I'm unavailable during that time. It could be like letting someone wait. Someone needs an answer from you, and it's not an urgent emergency. It can wait until after your Sabbath. So it's even small things like that where you're drawing little boundaries around your time and energy and attention and focusing it elsewhere, and then picking up where you left off. Second, Sabbath is about delight. And so many people forget about this when they think about Sabbath. But Sabbath really is about enjoyment. It's about delight. It's not just recovery because God calls Sabbath a delight, but it's more than merely a break. It's actually like you find things that you enjoy doing by yourself or with other people. It could be having people over to your home, even for a meal, a Shabbat meal on a Friday night. It could be a brunch together. It could be just whatever it is, like a movie in the afternoon or going out to a movie when you have other things that are calling for your attention. It's about doing those things that recharge and help you find delight in your life and in God. Okay? And then thirdly is Sabbath reorients identity. Sabbath reminds us that we're loved apart from our usefulness. This is so important in our culture and in our society. You are loved no matter what you do or don't do. You are loved perfectly outside of anything you are useful for. You are loved because you are you, and that's enough to God, and it should be enough for others. Fourthly, lastly, so we talked about Sabbath means stopping. Sabbath is about delight. Third, Sabbath reorients identity. And then fourthly, Sabbath trains trust. Stopping is actually an act of faith, especially in our day. Stopping is an act of faith that God will keep working when you don't, that you can trust Him to continue doing what He needs to do so that you can rest and you can recharge. So it could be just being conscious of the unfinished tasks that you have to do, the emails in the inbox or the unchecked to-dos on your list. And it could be just trusting that God will give you enough time, attention, and energy after Sabbath, and maybe because of Sabbath, to do the things you need to do. And just simply knowing that the world is going to continue to turn without your investment in it or your attention to it, trusting that God, the God that raises the sun in the morning, is the God that causes it to set at night. He's going to do it all over again tomorrow. There's a certain peace to that, knowing that He's in control and you don't need to be, because you're really not anyway. So I know there are a couple of objections that usually come up with this. First is that Sabbath isn't realistic for someone in the season of life that I am. And I'll just acknowledge this. Sabbath looks different depending on the season that you're in. Like, it looks different than us now having a preteen and a teen than it did when we had babies and toddlers. Like, it just looks different because our kids can participate differently, that our jobs are lined up. Sarah and I, our jobs are lined up in a way that we can practice this together. It could be that you just don't have a 24-hour period. You work every day or you have obligations. I would just say, wherever you're at, just start there. It could be 4-6 hours that you start with and work your way up to 24. It could be that it looks different, like your naps might be a little bit shorter, or your movies out don't happen for a while, or it may just be that it's different than you expect it to be. And I want to give you permission and just start and saying yes to Sabbath wherever you're at, and take that pressure off of you. Jesus understands and He knows. Okay. The second objection that I run into is that rest feels unproductive and uncomfortable. And I'm going to tell you, yes. Anything new that isn't practiced regularly is going to feel uncomfortable. This is why you feel sore after you work out, because you haven't done it a lot or enough to not be sore. So feeling like you're unproductive and uncomfortable because of it is normal to the process. Push through. That discomfort is often a withdrawal from hurry. It's not laziness. So you're going through withdrawals of busyness, so that you can actually break through to true rest. So what would this look like for you and for us? Imagine a life where one day each week isn't driven by urgency. It really is driven by, these are all my favorite things to do with all my favorite people. Where you're not checking the clock, where you're not checking your phone, where rest isn't something you earn, but it's something that you receive. Imagine that. Imagine how your relationships might change if you were less rushed and you had more wide open space for connection and to be present with each other. How your faith might deepen if you stop long enough to notice God's presence in your midst and if you invited Him into your home in a unique way. Sabbath doesn't fix everything, but it does create space for healing, clarity, and joy to take root. This is the life that Jesus invites us into. Not faster or harder, but truer to our design, to who we're really meant to be. So here's something I want to invite us all in to put this into practice. I want you to pick a Sabbath window. It could be 4 hours, it could be 24 hours. But I want you to pick some time that you can stick with semi-regularly at least. Ideally, and this is ideal, so might be a stretch for a lot of us. Ideally, it's a 24-hour period of time where you take rest from any work, paid and non-paid. That's the stretch. And so working into that just might be, I can do 4 hours on a Friday night, or I can do 4 hours mid-Saturday or mid-Sunday, and that's where I'll start. Whatever it is, pick it and stick with it and protect it to put this into practice. So my hope for you is that not only you find moments to catch your breath, but you actually develop rhythms of spiritual health through these practices, and specifically through this practice of Sabbath. Thanks again for tuning in. I hope you have a great rest of your day and a good start to 2026.